Man, you popped in a collar really quick.
I always do.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I didn't even notice.
I'm the fastest man. Oh yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to another week of another episode of Disciples on a Mission. This is an exciting one because I'm talking to Bishop Mark. I got to speak to Bishop. He's had a big influence on my life, but in this episode we talk about somebody who is constantly seeking us out. And it's this, his name is the Hound of Heaven. And it's kind of this idea or notion of God and the inescapable God. Bishop brought up, not in the interview, but in another conversation, how this is a good depiction of Psalm 139. If you ever get a chance to read Psalm 139, it's so good. Like every day, just read it. Here's some of it. It's the Psalm on the inescapable God, where it says, "O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You beset me behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it." And like it goes on, keeps saying more and more. It's really good. "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb." Oh, like it's just amazing when you think about this. "And you search me, O God, and know my heart." It's kind of interesting to reflect upon, but it can seem. It depends on how you see God, I guess. I definitely see God as this ultimate lover, like Bishop talks about. And this is a beautiful reality, that God is always seeking us out. Each one of his children, no matter where we are, in what state of life we're in, he's seeking us all out. And that's what we talk about today. And he shares his story and his testimony a little bit of just the hound seeking him out, the hound coming after him. So I hope you enjoy this interview. The super sad thing about this, and this is just the nature of doing working with technology. I recorded, like we had this all on video, so you could have watched it and then see just, I guess, Bishop's reactions or facial expressions. Just kind of nice to be able to watch it sometimes. But I lost the entire video. I still have the audio though, so that's nice, and that's how you're able to still listen to this. Anyways, we're gonna keep pressing on. Hope to be able to have him again on and continue chatting. We have lots of great discussions. But enjoy my conversation with Bishop right after this intro. In 3, 2.
Rose for Christ, learning the way, living the gospel every day. We're just striving to practice dying. The greatest adventure, disciples on a mission.
Hey, Bishop.
Hi, Jerome. How you doing?
Good. I'm excited. We're talking about the Hound of Heaven.
Okay.
So first of all, this is something that's come up a little bit in our conversation, or quite a bit actually. And it's something I've never heard anywhere else except for in conversation with you. So I'm still curious about, and I'm going to ask you who he is, or where he comes from, and then also your experience with the hound in your life.
Okay.
So first, the hound. Who is this hound that you speak of?
Well, the Hound of Heaven is the big guy. It's God.
Okay.
Yeah. It's God's, but it's a certain experience of God. It's the relentless way in which God, the absolute and ultimate lover, seeks us out, especially when we're lost or maybe just a little away. But the more lost someone is, or the greater the difficulty they are in, the more the Hound of Heaven is searching one out, is searching you out. The Hound of Heaven is actually, I discovered, I thought it was connected to St. Augustine. And when people hear the Hound of Heaven, they often talk about St. Augustine. But it wasn't St. Augustine that used that phrase. It was actually hundreds of years later, an English poet named Francis Thompson And he lived just at the end of the 19th century, died in the early 20th century. He didn't live long. He died, I think, in his late 40s.
So he didn't die that long ago.
No, but I guess his background was he was from a very well-to-do family, and his family kind of planned for him to be maybe a doctor or a priest, and he went off to study at a good school, and then I understand he just didn't do well. He did very well in language and writing, which makes sense for a poet, but he did very poorly in the other studies that you need in math and science. And so then after medical school didn't go well, then they thought about the priesthood, but his studies didn't go well there either, at least all of them. And I think also some other issues cropped up. And so it was determined by the seminary he wasn't meant to pursue priesthood. So then he left, and he went to, I don't know the name of the town, but he went to the big city, and he kind of tried to go on his own, and he got odd jobs, and but increasingly he was dealing with some sickness, and there was a drug called laudanum that was used. And
for the healing his sickness?
Yeah, to help you with your sickness. And but laudanum is an opiate, and it's addictive, very addictive.
Okay.
And he slowly got drug addicted, and then as he got drug addicted, it affected his life, and he kind of was sort of going the path increasingly of. I grew up in Vancouver, and we have an area called the Downtown East Side, where a lot of people end up going to because they're in the throes of their addiction, and they can't sort of find their way out, and so they do what they can to kind of just sustain their addiction. So it was a bit like that for Francis Thompson, and anyway, yeah, he hit pretty low, and then he was, I understand, kind of family kind of came into his situation, and he. His writing, the gentleman was a publisher, and really respected his writing, and so he tried to work with him to, kind of get him to write more, and so he would, but he was still in the throes of his addiction, and so as it went on, they tried to increasingly help him, and it was not an easy go for him, and he had to hit really low before he could come out. And so, it's kind of, like it is, if you ever talk to a recovered addict, it's the recovered addict that gets the real tough teaching of the gospel the most, like the Beatitudes,
like they just have an understanding of it, like that others don't.
I think they've hit rock bottom, and then it's when they've hit rock bottom and they don't know how they're going to ever leave that place, that the relentless voice of God pierces through that, and like the Beatitudes make sense to a recovered addict. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst greatly for what is right and true. That's what will fulfill us. So, so that's an extreme kind of experience of the Hound of Heaven.
So that was the story of his life, which sounds pretty rough. And then he, in his poetry, came up with the Hound, of just that experience of him still feeling like drawn and pulled from that, hitting that rock bottom.
Yeah, when he hit that rock bottom, he was able to come out of it and then reflect on how he came out of it. And his poetry is really a love ballad to the Hound of Heaven, to God, about the experience he went through with the relentless voice of the Hound of Heaven calling him, especially in the throes of his greatest difficulty. I mean, the poem starts, I have it here.
Oh, wow.
It.
You need your glasses.
I need my glasses.
You're not old, though, right?
I've always needed my glasses. I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches and the years. I fled down the labyrinth ways of my own mind, and in the midst of tears, I hid from him and under running laughter. A little later on, the voice starts speaking. All things betray thee who betrayest me. Across the margin of the world I fled, and troubled the gold gateways of the stars, smiting for shelter and their clanged bars. I mean, it's classical English writing, right?
Yeah.
I said to dawn, be sudden, to eve, be soon. With thy young sky blossoms heap me over from this tremendous lover. So it's, it's a bit, you've heard of the song by Matt Maher, Alive Again. That was and still is a popular song in our Catholic Christian modern music, and I understand the song is reflecting on St. Augustine's conversion, but there's so many parallels with this poetry. Late have I loved you. I wake to reality, and yet it was losing its grip on me. I couldn't see or hear, and you broke into my blindness and my deafness, and broke into my life and washed away my blindness. Those words are kind of reflected in Francis Thompson, Hound of Heaven.
And that kind of relates to Augustine's restless heart idea.
Yeah.
And how just his constant searching.
Well, I think so. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. I mean, the Hound of Heaven, as you go through the poetry and you learn the experience of the life of Francis Thompson, he was running away from the one who would truly give him love and happiness and peace. And it's kind of the mystery that I think many people, maybe we all, deal with, that, the ultimate lover is there for us, and he's constantly calling us, but he never forces himself on us. And it's amazing, the blessings that God will bestow or want to bestow, but sometimes we're not able or ready or wanting or able to receive them fully. I mean, that's the story of the Old Testament.
Yeah. And then how about your life? What?
Okay, you
always talk about the hound in your own life.
Well, the Hound of Heaven is often used in relation to people's recalling their own vocation story.
So is it usually mostly just tied to religious life or priesthood?
Oh, I don't think so.
Or is it just the faith in general coming?
I think both. I think it's tied to the faith in general, but it's often tied to, I've heard several priests, for example, talk about, the Hound of Heaven kept coming. I didn't want to hear him. And that's a bit of, I guess, my story too. I think the first experience was, I was just a high school student, and I loved football. I was a running back, and I think I did okay at it. And so I did okay at school and so forth, but I lived for football practice. I lived for the football game. And then I was playing in a game, and I got injured badly. It was a kidney accident. It was a spear. The lineman comes in and hits the guy. Well, one guy stands him up, and the other guy hits him. The spear was with the helmet. It's supposed to be illegal, but anyway, whatever. And so it started my kidney internally bleeding.
Really?
And so
I don't think I've ever heard this story, actually.
Well, I don't tell it too much now. But anyway, so I had to go to hospital. I was there 3 weeks because they had to repair it, and they also found that I had been born with a defect. And that kidney happened to not be fully functioning anyway, and it would have kind of come out later in my life, and so it was kind of providential that they discovered this. They wouldn't have discovered it without the injury. But then I couldn't play football. I remember the doctor saying to me, Mark, I'd say this to a young high school guy like you or a professional player. I would advise you to not play football again.
What? Just because of a kidney?
Well, he said you have now... The long and short of it was they had to pull out half the kidney.
Oh my gosh!
Because it was never working. I was born with this defect, so I have a kidney and a half. So I did not want to hear that. And I went home crying, and I was just devastated. And I thought, life without football? No way! I just forget it. And I couldn't even go to games and watch them for a while, my fellow teammates playing, because it was just so hard.
And what grade was this?
It was only grade 10.
Oh, so you still had your
I still had a couple
years
years.
Coming up.
Yeah, exactly. And all these guys I was really close to, and so but then then this sort of quiet voice would come up within, I'm glad you love football, but I didn't make you for football. And it would just be sort of a quiet voice, nothing imposing, but steady. And it was like, I don't want to hear that. But
why not? Wouldn't that, like, to me, I'd be like, oh, it's just freeing.
not
like,
right
I don't.
away. No.
I'd be like, oh, good,
No.
because I know football's not about life.
No, and I felt so. I mean, after I got into other things. I got into track and field. I also got into musicals, and I really enjoyed that. With our school was Vancouver College, a boys' school, and then we had
Oh, it was just boys.
yeah. But then with the musicals, we worked with a girls' school. It was the only
Okay.
I think we had a few activities with the girls' school called Little Flower Academy. Named after Saint Therese.
Nice.
So that was that was a good benefit.
Yeah.
To work with the girls' school on musicals. But yeah, so that was maybe the first experience. I think another profound experience. Well, not profound, but memorable was as at university. So I'd been through high school at a Catholic high school. I loved my Catholic high school. But when I went to UBC, this big, huge, expansive university with all these different people, I almost not necessarily explicitly, but I kind of put my faith on hold a bit. I still went to Mass on Sunday and all that, but I wanted to check all this other world out. Yeah. And I took some studies. I took history, international politics or international relations, and then I studied physical geography. And I kind of wanted to look at the answers in academia to some of the problems I saw in the world, and I thought modern European history would be a good way to look at those problems and come up with solutions. And to make a long story short, and maybe I was just too idealistic and young, but I was disappointed with the answers I was getting, and university kind of both left me intrigued, but a little bit empty in terms of some of the conclusions I came to. I remember a bit of an existential crisis for me came when I looked at Mahatma Gandhi and Adolf Hitler, and I really admired Mahatma Gandhi. But it was like, it doesn't matter how many Gandhis we have, we get this time in 20th century history where the world was utterly devastated by the worst of evil that humanity could muster. And it just kind of broke my heart. I couldn't believe it. And I knew that history sort of loosely in high school, but it just really hit me for some reason. And the reprieve in that was studying geography. It was just looking at how God made the earth. And it was kind of like a treasure hunt. You would look into the depths of the earth to find how chemicals precipitated out, and you might find silver or gold, but you looked at how water formed the surfaces, and you looked at geothermal energy underneath. It was just fascinating. So I kind of surprisingly enjoyed that more than some of the humanities courses, though I had some great humanities courses as well. But then in all of this, I would hear the voice as I was kind of feeling low about 20th century, Europe history, and humanity was I am beyond all of this, and I will always seek you with the greatest love. And it was kind of, I don't really expect to hear that. Where is that coming from? And anyway, I kind of put it off.
Yeah.
And then something I think you do know, I've shared with you before briefly, was after university and after working for a year, I really wanted to travel around the world. And so I went around the Northern Hemisphere mainly. And but that trip became an occasion for a kind of a hunt for what am I going to do with my life? And how am I going to live my life? And I wanted to look at other faiths, other cultures. And so I did. And I started off in Southeast Asia, went through the Middle East, then into Europe, and I won't get into all of that. But then the Hound of Heaven kept coming. Really.
Hey friends, if people do not hear or accept the call to come follow Christ, then I believe they miss out on life's greatest adventure and deepest meaning. Disciple on a Mission creates videos and podcasts to help inspire young people in becoming disciples for Christ. If you guys would like to support the mission of these videos and podcasts, then I highly encourage you to become an official Patreon member. This will help me in order to continue making these videos and podcasts. And I'd also really appreciate your prayers And if you found something valuable out of this episode, just to share it with one friend, just one friend. If each of you guys shared this with one friend, that could double the listeners for next week and grow exponentially the mission in trying to proclaim Christ's love to the world. Okay, well, thanks so much for listening, and I'll get back to the episode.
So I started off my trip, and I was thinking of all sorts of things. I'd put the priesthood, it had always been there, but on hold, because I didn't want to really look at that. I wanted to maybe get married. Family was important. Ironically, the whole family dynamic of priesthood is actually what also intrigued me as a younger man, being a part of a family of faith. I had a really good experience of that growing up. That was intriguing about priesthood. But then, working in business, maybe being a teacher, all these things kept coming up, and I was intrigued by looking at them. But the priesthood was always there under the surface. But I'd pushed it away. I just didn't. I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So then the Hound of Heaven. So then I was starting my trip, and I was going around the world. I was traveling from, I think, Japan to Taiwan, and this sort of quiet voice, and I know it sounds weird, but it said, "Trust me, trust me," and it was calm and it was peaceful. Then priesthood. The priesthood kept coming up.
It just seemed like come up more in your thoughts.
Well, then I pushed it away. I kept pushing it away, and it wouldn't go away. But it was very calm. It was, trust me, priesthood. Trust me. So it kept coming. It started to get me a little bit irate.
Yeah.
So
especially on your travels, you're just kind of...
I'd made all this money to travel. I was at the beginning of a whole year. So I started praying. I'll say, okay, Lord, I'll deal with this when I get home, but not now. And I think you've put on my heart this trip, so I don't really want to deal with this right now. But I will when I get home, Lord.
Yeah.
Trust me. Priesthood. Trust me. So I started getting mad at God in my prayer. Leave me alone, Lord. I just want to be present to this trip that I think you wanted me to take, because, it's all happening. Trust me. Priesthood. So finally, in a bit of a moment of exasperation, I said, okay, Lord, I promise you when I return, I will see Archbishop Carney. He was the bishop at the time. And he may not accept me, but I promise you, when I return home, I will do this. Instant peace. Instant peace.
That's so fascinating, because I find just that the fact of being open usually brings that peace. And then it's like, you're just able to rest. Just the openness.
Well, yeah, that's what happened. And it kind of, then the rest of the trip, it's interesting, and I relate this to the Hound of Heaven as I
was that like halfway through your trip?
No, it was right at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
God was like...
That's good. At least you got to like be at peace throughout your trip.
Well, the other thing that was neat is I was seeing, sort of in hindsight, the trip through the lens of trusting in the Lord about my future.
Okay.
And it was nice to do that early on, I guess. But then I mentioned the issue of wanting to discern, faith and what faith I was going to live. And you kind of think, well, if you're going to be a discerned priesthood, but that was still there. And so having seen kind of the worst of Christian Europe and what had happened in the 20th century in my studies at university, and I was still dealing with this tension between, Mahatma Gandhi, Adolf Hitler, and then it was like, Christ, the figure of Christ really came forward. And I said, okay, if I'm going to continue to be Catholic and if I'm going to embrace the fullness of Christianity, I got to go to the central theme. That's Jesus Christ. So I knew enough, as a good, faithful high school Catholic boy, to know that you go to the Gospels to learn about Christ.
Yeah.
So I bought a Bible.
And let me guess, you went to Mark.
And there's two reasons to go to Mark. One is it's my name.
Yeah.
The other is it is the shortest Gospel.
Yeah.
So I did go to Mark. And so I read for the first time, and I bought my Bible for $1.45.
Really?
In Manila. Yeah, it was a great deal.
In Manila? And they had English?
Oh, yeah. English is very, very common in the Philippines.
Well, that's cool.
So
Do you still have the Bible?
you know what, I do.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Okay. Well, maybe sometime.
Did you take notes in it?
No, not like I know you're a note taker, Jerome.
Yeah,
Yeah. So anyway, I read it slowly, word for word, and it was like just from the perspective of needing not just a leader, but a way of life that cut through the existential crisis that I kind of was dealing with looking at world history. It was the way of Jesus. It was like this is the answer. I mean, the teaching, the preaching, and the way he went forward to be generous, to heal, to give himself to the stranger, to all men and women in need, and then finally, the bizarre mystery of the cross. I mean, it was like no wonder.
That's so good. That's the best thing for an idealistic person.
Well, I have my pragmatic side, but that came out later. But anyway, yeah. But no. So then it was like this is the answer. No, whether I'm a priest or what. I mean, I want to give my life to this.
That must have been so refreshing just to like.
Oh yeah. It.
But that's you must have known about Jesus before, like
course.
growing up. But it was just this like renewed encounter with understanding the way of Christ.
I suppose the term that I've heard used a lot is kind of not just renewal, but re-evangelization or reconversion.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it was for me.
Or do you think it was because you were at a moment where you're like took ownership of is this going to be something a part of my identity or?
I think I was, I don't know if I taking ownership. I think what was speaking to me was I was earnestly looking for a meaningful way to live my life that was the answer to what
all this suffering,
not just what I was seeing, but what everyone was seeing. I mean, part of studying 20th century history is to look at the war to end all wars. World War I was terrible for young guys in particular.
Yeah.
I mean, boys. And then that terrible experience was supposed to be the war to end all wars. 20 years later, World War II happened. But even following World War II, Russia, which became the Soviet Union, later in Cambodia, and just to name some of the big wars that happened after. I mean, we couldn't get it, and it was like, what is the answer to this? Because we seem to do so well. I mean, I studied in international relations. The world has only been at war at 5% of the time. That's pretty good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I learned anyway, at least up until 1984 or 83. But man, that 5%. And in the 20th century, with the way technology was going, and we didn't even have nuclear weapons yet until after the Second World War, the end of the Second World War we did, that 5 years could blow the hell out of everything, and so, 5% or not.
Yeah, it's there, and you got to deal with it.
And that's just World War. We're not talking about other ways in which human beings can be pretty rotten to each other. And as a young guy, I was looking at it. I was pretty idealistic, and I wanted to solve that. I keep going to Mahatma Gandhi. I really like what he did in India. I mean, this really spoke to me. It was if you will, the gospel, his gospel or version of nonviolence, that you push forward for the good that you see must be done, but you will not give up your principles in terms of violence and destruction on others. And that was a great contrast. They say Mahatma Gandhi is a bit like St. Paul, or maybe vice versa.
Really?
Anyway.
I haven't done much research on
topic.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, so, now I got to say the Hound of Heaven never stops being the Hound of Heaven. And I found in my priesthood, and as a bishop now, I mean, there's times where, God has to persistently and gently speak to me, and I need to hear him, who's basically saying, I love you, trust in me and follow me, and do not let the greatest worries and concerns take you from my heart. And it also, the Hound of Heaven is also a bit of a reminder to me about my pastoral priority. It's easy for bishops, so I'll speak for myself. It's easy to kind of really get into the administration and all the problems of organizing the diocese and so forth. And the Hound of Heaven reminds me that God is the absolute lover of the beloved. And so the genius, or the most important thing of pastoral ministry, is to act like the ultimate lover and to not forget that. And that's not easy, you know.
Yeah. So do you try and kind of imitate that the hound in your own life in terms of the shepherd?
I try to.
Huh.
I'm not quite the hound that the hound is, but
Yeah.
but I mean, you know,
I think you do a pretty good job.
Oh,
though,
you're
Bishop.
very kind.
Yeah, no.
But I mean, that's you know, the call to, you know, leave the 99 who are in pretty good shape or they're doing okay, to go for the devastated one that has really fallen away and is lost, that lost sheep, you know.
Huh.
So, and the Hound of Heaven reminds us of the heart of God for the one of the 100 that really needs help. And it reminds me that ministry isn't a numbers game. It's about that one person one day at a time, and it's good to be brought back to that when, you know, the problems and the administration and all the activities get so big and broad. And what's the most important thing, Lord, you want me to do? And
But it gives me a lot of hope just thinking about that. Like, God is seeking every single one of his children out, like everyone out in their own particular way of like how they need to hear it, and in a gentle way, or just exactly of how they need to be called back in their own situation. And so it gives me a lot of hope. It's like God's working, you know, he's drawing his children back to him.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, we're all that one sheep, right?
We're all that one sheep. One of my still favorite Old Testament pieces is the Exodus event. I mean, in the Exodus event, you know, I mean, he does amazingly great things to save his beloved Israel, and he's split the darn Red Sea for them, let alone fire and locusts and all sorts of things. And
manna.
Yeah, and then eventually birds, and they get stuff with those. But they still doubt and are angry and rebel, and it's because they're dealing with the greater evil within them. They're still dealing with that rebellion and sin, to the point where they'd rather go back to the slavery they knew than to the opportunity of the freedom of an unknown future. And that issue plays itself out in all of us all the time, I think. You know, that God is faithful, you know, and do I, you know, in the times when I'm dealing with all these challenges and difficulties and threats, and do I remember that? Do I see that? Do I look for that? And do I act in that and live in that? You know, so I find the Exodus event in the Old Testament one of the most. It's my favorite story. It's a profound conversion story, and every Lent it fires me up for my own call to ongoing conversion.
Huh. And it seems to summarize like the Old Testament in general, or just the story of the salvation of God's people.
I think you're right.
Like it is a really interesting. Huh. And even just the word, the hound, it's almost just like what you're saying and how you're describing it. It sounds like just another word for the good shepherd. But like
it's a good point, because for some people first hear hound, they think wolf or dog.
But I like that, because it almost sounds like more aggressive, like he's sniffing you out, like he's coming to get you. Like part of me likes that idea. But there's
a depiction in one of the you can go online, and there's depictions of the retelling of the Hound of Heaven, and there's a picture of the hound in one of them that it's the dog is like a big woolly kind dog. It's not like a pit bull or something, or a wolf. You know, It's just interesting that it's a very pleasant view of a hound. Hounds are persistent.
Yeah.
They go after for their master. You know, if they're hunting hounds, very faithfully. But in this case, the hound is looking for the lost soul. And choose your image well.
That's good. Well, thanks so much, Bishop. This was fun. Thanks for your time.
Okay, Jerome. Well,
and thanks so much for your priesthood, or would you say bishophood? Is that a thing?
I think you would.
You'd say bishophood?
I've never heard someone say my bishophood. I think they.
Well, I'm going to say thanks for your bishophood. It's actually been a real blessing to me and especially my family as well. But I know it a lot more people. So thanks so much. I'm glad the Hound got you back.
Good to share with you. The Hound keeps hounding. And
yeah,
thank God
I was
for
thinking,
the Hound.
I was thinking next time if you'd come back again, we could talk about the chicken of purgatory.
The who?
The chicken of purgatory.
The chicken of purgatory. I've never heard of the chicken of purgatory. Have you, or did you just make that up?
I just made that up.
I thought you did. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks so much for listening, everybody. Continue glorifying God with your lives, and peace be with you.
God bless.
Rose for Christ, learning the way, living the gospel every day. We're just striving to practice dying. The greatest adventure, disciples on a mission.